Thank you, Izaz. Assalamualaikum, selamat pagi, good morning everyone. Yang berhormat, Datuk Sri Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends from our Planetary Health family, welcome to Malaysia. I've always imagined myself hosting either, like a Jimmy Fallon show or Ellen DeGeneres, and they always have the lace switch and the jazz band, so this is my little, dream come true. So thanks, Izaz. Let me add my own very warm welcome to all of you to this 6th Planetary Health Annual Meeting and the first Planetary Health Summit. Welcome to Sunway University, home of the Sunway Centre for Planetary Health. By the way, we're not even 3 years old. But the first such fully established, dedicated Planetary Health Centre in Asia, we believe, with the generous support of the Sunway Group and Tan Sri Jemilah, who will be speaking to us later at dinner tonight. Before I came on stage, my team was actively sending me updates on statistics. And when we started organizing this, we thought, well, maybe we can get 400 participants to come. We'll be very lucky because the world has changed. People, travel has been very difficult. And let's face it, Asia is very far away from Europe and North America. As of this morning, we have 1,069 participants registered, 714 in person from 63 countries. So thank you so much. This has been quite a long journey and a tough one, logistically and financially for sure. But for me, and I am certain for many of you, this planetary health journey that we are all on is an emotional one as well. I am often told, I think we are often told, don't be emotional. But I want to stress today the importance of being emotional, because my sense that the human race is in a place that it is in now because in no small part we have become so disconnected from our emotions. I would like you all to just close your eyes and keep them closed for a moment and recall that feeling we get when seeing something really stunning in nature, whether a rainbow after a storm, a flock of birds flying dramatically across a blue sky, colorful fish and coral if you're a diver like me in the ocean, or cherry blossoms in springtime. That sense of injustice, sometimes outrage, we feel when things are said or done that are quite simply not right, not just, not moral. The joy we feel when meeting family or friends, arriving at airports, or seeing our own child or grandchild for the first time. And for me, the deep sense of frustration I feel when conversations about our relationship with nature are being held primarily in countries which bear the most responsibility for the breakdown in that relationship. In academic institutions far removed from the tropical realities of life in the tropical forests, and some of you experienced the mosquitoes and heat yesterday, working with indigenous and having fun with indigenous people in jungle school. In the city of Ipoh, which is trying to rebuild itself as Asia's first donut economic city, in the slums of Jakarta or the rice fields of Myanmar. For those who still have your eyes closed, you can open them now. I don't know if you have seen this, but if you haven't, I would recommend that you watch an episode of BBC's Hard Talk with Stefan Sakur, interviewing the president of Guyana, where Sakur tries to take the president to task on exploitation of Guyanan oil. The President refuses to be lectured and highlights the protection of Guyanan rainforests, which stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon, which no one pays for, and which the rest of the world takes for granted. It is the unfairness of the questioning and the presumptions of a British male journalist that Guyana isn't doing its bit that is galling. Unlike President Irfan Ali of Guyana, we seem to be less reactive than we used to be. Our sense of outrage and injustice is being dulled by media and social media overload, by bad news stories. We need to shift that narrative, talk not only about what's going wrong, but also what is already happening to help change that. It's this kind of discussion which made Sunway University and my team, and you can see we're a little team, and me so keen to bring the Planetary Health annual meeting to Asia, to encourage this corner of the planet to rethink our relationship with nature and to confront our realities, which is that our current relationship with nature is utterly unsustainable. And also to demonstrate that we are willing and able to be included in the global discussions as responsible and equal partners. As with other crises, it's worth remembering that the planetary health crisis is impacting those who are least able to protect themselves the most. Giving them agency, voice, and a seat at the table is one of our top priorities. Since preparing for this summit and annual meeting, we have been confronted by not only conflicts in Europe, but more recently in the Middle East. The planet-warming emissions generated during the first 60 days of war in Gaza amounted to 281,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. And this was attributed to Israel's aerial bombardment and ground invasion. And this is greater than the annual carbon footprint of more than 20 of the world's most climate-vulnerable nations. The data from this recent study, based on only a handful of carbon-intensive activities, is therefore probably a gross underestimate and equivalent to burning at least 150,000 tons of coal. Almost half of the total CO2 emissions were down to US cargo planes flying military supplies to Israel. And all this only from the first 60 days. So, we, the planetary health community, have a moral and scientific responsibility to advocate for peace and justice. The long-term repercussions on people and planet is not acceptable. We cannot have planetary health without peace. So inherently, we need political commitment and good global governance. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank the Planetary Health Alliance for trusting us to host this year's event. I felt that we had the audacity, very early age of the center to ask for this, but you have supported our efforts to confront reality by pushing the conversation forward, so that it's not simply about evidence, but also about using that evidence to really generate change. With that framing, allow me to share with you a few of our aspirations for the next few days. Firstly, we need to spend some time figuring out what is important. We have spoken of and continue to push for a just global transition. What are the key things that we need to do to accelerate that process? What's already underway? What can we build on? What do we need to stop worrying about because it simply isn't going to help us? What are the realities we have to confront? Are they the same everywhere for everyone? Or do they differ based on location, gender, race, skin color, orientation, religion? What does just mean? We've built the agenda for the next 3 days around trying to find answers for at least some of these questions. And let me please welcome faith-based leaders from around the world. We have rabbis, imams, priests, monks, all sorts of faith institutions also helping us think this through. So thank you for traveling here. The roadmap, which we will discuss on Friday, is deliberately relatively generic, and its action plan is broad on purpose. It's clear we need some tools, we need evidence and research, but we also need to work out how to better engage with folks who, at the moment, don't have a clue about what we're discussing, including people with real influence to make change happen. Politicians, policymakers, business people, teachers, young people, indigenous people, and other stakeholders so brilliantly captured in the 2021 Sao Paulo Declaration. And that's why the summit this week has included a series of pre-event workshops. It started already with the faith community, as I mentioned, about how faith leaders can lend their voice to the planetary health message and influence behavioral change, with 30 journalists from across the region helping them to understand better the need for solutions-based reporting on climate and not forgetting health, with a practical training of healthcare professionals in how to decarbonize the health sector, currently responsible for 5% of emissions globally. And I really thank the Ministry of Health for their incredible support. With more than 150 of you, we took you out of the city yesterday, partly to help you fight off jet lag, but far more importantly, to enable you to engage with Malaysian nature and biodiversity and its indigenous stewards, hopefully to galvanize you for the next 4 days and to keep you rooted in reality. We got some comments back, mosquitoes, very hot, very warm. You know, Malaysia has become extremely warm the last 6 months. But for those of you who are visiting, this is our reality and the reality of people who are vulnerable and indigenous people as well, their everyday realities. Secondly, we need to embrace the fact that planetary health is everything, everywhere, all at once, to the point where labeling it may actually prove to be a bit restrictive. It's simple. Planetary health is about the relationship between the health of the planet and our health. Both need to be balanced, both need to be existing in a state of harmony. That means that systems must align, must shift, and that in order to support that alignment, some movements will be needed. In other words, disruption. It is our job to point that out where needed, push for that disruption to happen. And those who know me know that I started life as an obstetrician. The 3 words I use most are push, push, and push. Here in Malaysia, we are developing a planetary health action plan. A few of us in this room are engaged in it, focused on the communications and behavioral change aspects, and we are leading on that. And it's been fascinating to see how other working groups recognize that Malaysia's policy and legal environments will have to be seriously disrupted if we are to implement the plan. This doesn't have to mean chaos, but it does mean some really serious thinking, policy generation, and very carefully considered communications and behavior change initiatives. The fact that our work is being tightly coordinated by the Malaysian Academy of Science is a real significantly added value. And our progress with neighbors and further afield, and we all need to learn from each other by doing as much as we can and also as much as we think. Thirdly, apart from my career as a doctor, I spent the last 2 decades and more as a humanitarian aid worker. The humanitarian sector is an interesting melting pot. UN, NGOs of all stripes and types, the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, civil society organizations, and the private sector. In the middle of all this, there is a relatively small UN office called the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, where I used to work. And its job, with a pretty slim budget and about 2,000 staff globally, and for context, that's about 1,200 less people than the Malaysian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is to coordinate humanitarian action all around the planet. They do this pretty well, in part because they have the instructional weight of the UN behind them, but it's also because their mandate is only to coordinate, only to bring a hugely diverse set of stakeholders together to focus on coordination that quite literally saves lives and gets assistance to people in need. I'm firmly of the view that our planetary health movement needs a mini OCHA. We are a group of diverse stakeholders. We have articulated on several occasions our desire to work together, to coordinate with each other. The Sao Paulo Declaration was a call for joined-up action across stakeholders, and the Kuala Lumpur Call to Action states in operational paragraph 2 that we will renew our efforts working at all levels with all stakeholders to apply the growing evidence base to propose and develop solutions that will allow humanity and the natural systems we depend on to thrive now and in the future. This includes supporting the United Nations and its member states in charting a planetary health-informed pathway for the successor arrangements to the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. So we are delighted that you're here, Hao-Liang. These are lofty but vital ambitions which require joined-up thinking and action. Now, the other thing I can tell you about coordination is that it just doesn't happen like that. It takes people who are experienced in it, in movement building, in slick communications and strategic use of technology to drive a movement forward. So we need to raise money. We need to strengthen the alliance, and we need an alliance to step up to this challenge, both in DC and through some very significant investment in the regional hubs. In the humanitarian world, the cry often is everyone wants coordination, but no one wants to be coordinated. Let us recognize the power of a coordinated movement, of united voices, of common messaging, of strategic cross-movement approaches to the COPs in future, and the important intercessional meetings where the real work gets done. The UN Summit of the Future in September and its 11 areas of focus, all of which have a planetary health angle, and the successor arrangements to the SDGs, the race for which is already underway. We have a wealth of evidence and research, and we have the capacity to generate a lot more. But it's not connecting with those who can make change happen. Then I have to ask, what is the point? Fourthly, and it's closely connected, what comes out of this summit is critical. The cost, not only in financial terms, but in emissions, in ecological damage, is something we must repay. We cannot afford to keep meeting, discussing, and leaving without a really clear and actionable plan. We all agree with this. Indeed, more than 100 of you leapt at the chance to be part of the process that has developed such a plan. So spending the next few days, as Marie mentioned, not only engaging in debate and discussion, but figuring out what we do between now and the next time we meet and how we hold ourselves to account should be at the front of our minds. And we have a framework for that, the Planetary Health Roadmap and Action Plan. Right now, the action plan is simply the final chapter of the roadmap. By the time we leave here on Friday, I hope that we can have 6 working groups formed with action leaders identified and at least a few of you here having signed up to join a group as action participants. A rough outline of what happens next, followed by working group meetings, agreement on dates to finalize terms or references for each of these groups, acclamation of the Kuala Lumpur call to action, which commits us to all 6 key actions, and a renewed sense of yes, we can. As Richard Horton, editor-in-chief of The Lancet, just recently wrote, among scientists, there is a naively simplistic approach to translating evidence into action. Publish your research in a high-impact journal, issue a press release, hold a press conference, post some tweets, record a podcast or video, prepare a call to action. You do not have to be a Nobel laureate to realize that this strategy simply is not working, unquote. We need to do more. We need to go further. Let us not waste this opportunity. In closing, let me once again offer my sincere thanks to our guest of honor, Honorable Minister of Health, for officiating, but also the incredible support we have received from your ministry. I've had the honor to serve on your advisory council before, and I know you do what you say, and your presence here confirms Malaysia's commitment to planetary health, as does its inclusion in the 12th Malaysian Plan, and the fact that we are among the first countries in the world to develop a national planetary health action plan. Thank you also to UNDP Associate Administrator Hao Liang Zhu. It's wonderful to see you again, whose consistent support for planetary health over the years is much appreciated. His Excellency Ekapap Phantavong, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN, and to our other special guests and speakers. Your presence and the force of your words will drive us forward over the next several days. Huge thanks to our sponsors and partners, without whom none of this would have been possible, and at this scale, and with this level of ambition. And my thanks, of course, goes to the Sunway fraternity for their unfailing support to all we do. We've had to shift halls several times because of the growing numbers, and our poor students coming in for orientation have had to be moved. And lastly, my deepest love and thanks to my team, who have been, quite simply, magnificent. I'm getting emotional. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have all decided to be here for a reason. On Friday at 5 p.m., we will close this meeting. What happens in between is up to us. I urge you to play your role, to play your part in building a planet where people and nature can thrive together. The real work will begin then. Thank you very much.